Hi, I'm Graham from Second Era of Moles, and if you've clicked on this video accidentally, 90 seconds is all I ever ask. Welcome to another week that was. We're on Unova Week 2. I'm settling on Unova. You can put that in the bank and come back to it later when I call it Unova. So this week we had our first crack at Unova's Masters mode. I did it already. What was that, less than a minute? We had the end of the Explorers event, we had Battle Villa, and we've got a new event just launched a few days ago. So, this week we're going to start off with the Champion Stadium and get to the other stuff towards the end. So the big draw of Champion Stadium is the Master Mode, but to do that you have to finish off Hard Mode and use all 18 types to do it. If you watched last week's video, you'll know that I managed to do 14 out of 18 types last week, which left me with only 4 to put into my teams this week, and this is how I did it. So for round 1, your special condition was don't let any of your sync pairs faint. I went into this one with Xerneas, Liepard and Sceptile. I went in with Liepard to tick off my Dark type, and what you want to do if you're doing my method is use all or nothing twice with Liepard and then one of its 2-bar moves for your first 3 before your first sync move. With Brendan in the middle you want to use direct hit twice and bullet seed, so that 2-bar move, and then Xerneas you want to use Dazzling Gleam. You can maybe use the World is Vast if you don't have many bars left on your move gauge to get down to your first sync move. And you want to sync with Xerneas first to get that boost in special attack, special defense and speed. That's why I would recommend not using no turning back. God, there's a double negative in that sentence somewhere. With Brendan, because that's going to boost his special attack by 6, but if you're getting it from Xerneas' sync anyway, you don't necessarily want to be taking 3 chunks out of your move gauge. After you sync, you're going with Leaf Storm, that's going to be your big move. Hornleech with Xerneas to regain your health and do a bit of damage as well, and then whatever moves, if you've got the space, with Grimsley, just to keep him ticking over as well. And it is just that simple. Hornleech, Leaf Storm, no worries. So for round 2, your condition was special attacks get a boost. I chose to go up against Shauntal for this one, who was weak to water this week. I went in with a team of Starmie, Octillery and Palkia. So Palkia crosses off my Dragon type, so that's 2 of the 4 that I needed already. Although Palkia is a Dragon type, it's got some pretty powerful water type moves, especially if you do the sync grid to take advantage of those. I went with Octillery, the Holiday Cybold unit, because I don't use it very often, and I thought once you got it you might as well use it. Let's see what it can do. So for Palkia you want to use New World Order twice. That is going to take away some of your health, so you want to be using Catch Us if you can with Misty on Palkia. That's going to give it a bit of healing hands as well, so it gets a little bit of a boost and then it gets more health back every time it uses an attack. And then either Hydro Pump or whatever its 2-bar move is to get down to the sync move. Misty, you want to be using the trainer moves. As I said, Catch Us if you can at least once. If Misty takes a lot of damage before that first sync move, you can use one on her as well. Octillery, I was using Scaldon to get some burn damage in there as well. And by that time you should be down to your first sync move, so I used it with Palkia. So your sync move doesn't necessarily do a huge amount of damage because it's not going to get that super effective bonus, but Hydro Pump is. I did one attack with Palkia that did over 11k damage, so whatever you've got in place there, that's doing a good job. And that was it. Palkia just went to town on the rest of them, got me through it. For round 3, your special condition was field effects become permanent. So I chose Caitlyn and I went in with an electric team of Heliolisk, Luxray and Raichu. So the reason I took Luxray into this one, it's quite a new unit for me. It's only recently I've got it up to a good level, but you can set electric terrain and that gives all of your electric types a boost. So you definitely want to use that before your first sync move. Other than that, you can use pretty much any of Heliolisk's moves. Mudslap will lower accuracy, Activate will raise its evasiveness, Parabolic Charge will give it back some HP. You want to use Feel the Alolan Breeze with Raichu and maybe Special Attack if you're feeling fancy, and then you can either use Thunderfang with Luxray to get some flinching going on, or you can make some sparks so that you get that critical hit with the Sync move. One thing to be aware of on this is that Caitlyn gets Endurance after using her Sync move. So on this one I was able to counter that with a Sync move of my own. Raichu did 11k points of damage on that, and because it's a Sync move it ignores the Endurance. And then you just discharge to your heart's content. That was a little bit dirty, I'm sorry about that. You use discharge until all of the other enemies faint. Luxray is a bit of a luxury in that he can cause flinch, but none of the enemies that are left are going to do a huge amount of damage to you. Round 4, your condition was status conditions last longer and do more damage. Marshall was Week 2 poison type this week, so it's a bit of a no-brainer. I went in there with a team of Koga, Janine with Ariados, and Blaine with Rapidash. Fire type was one of the other types that I needed, so that was a good little box to check off there. And he also has a move that causes trap. And your strategy for this one is very simple. Koga causes poison, Blaine causes trap, Janine uses Venom Drench to bring down the stats of all the other sync pairs. I was more focused on poisoning with Koga, and I didn't necessarily raise his evasiveness that much, so he didn't really dodge any attacks. He lost a lot of health, and he fainted when the first sync move hit, which was a bit annoying. Carnivine used one of its attacks that target all enemies, so a bit later it used that and caused Blaine to faint as well. Luckily on that same move, Poison and Trap took its health down to 0, so that just left Sarina. Janine was able to get a bit of evasion in there, and that meant that the Poison and the Trap took down Sarina, with Janine doing little bits of damage to pick away at that. Absolutely nothing to fear from that one. And finally, round 5 was Champion Iris this week, so I went in with 2 of my big boys and a Dragon type, and that would be Swanna, Blastoise, and Iris with Haxorus as the third one. So this one's pretty simple as well. You boost Iris's stats and just keep using Outrage. If you're feeling fancy like me, you can do your first sync with Swanna to get that 6x boost. Then you do the second one with Blastoise to get that Endurance, and then from there on out it's just the Iris show and the Haxorus show. 2 passage. Before that final battle I went back a few times and I checked and I was like, right, I've definitely used all of the types I need already, haven't I? But luckily for me I managed to get my big old medal and unlock Masters mode. So that's something good about this week, is you can take what you've learned from the hard mode go through and apply it to your second go through on master mode. I tried to do things a little bit differently. I didn't just want to use the same strategy, so I mixed up the order a bit. And now you will see how. So again, round 1, your condition is don't let any of your sync pairs faint. I went into this one with a team of Swanna, Blastoise and Empoleon, much like I did against Iris in the previous round. There's probably a reason for that. This week I kind of focus a lot on boosting strength, so you'll see that come along on most rounds that I've done this week. But if you've got the don't let them faint, it's always good to have your Blastoise in there. His sync move gives everyone endurance, which other than sync moves from the other team lets them take an extra hit. So there wasn't anything too crafty in this one. You boost Barry's speed, you use Take Flight, you use X Defense, you sync first with Swanna to get that 6x boost like last time, sync second with Blastoise to get that endurance like last time, and then you just keep dropping that old Barry bomb on them. I got a bit caught out on this one because Shauntal set up Sunny Day and then used Heat Wave, and it did massive damage to all of my team. If it hadn't have been for the endurance, that would have one-shotted my entire team, and I would not have been happy. But luckily, I was able to take out the middle with the next one. I think it was Chandelure this week, and then get some healing done onto Barry one of the side Pokemon used Earthquake the next time and it took out both sides. It didn't do a huge amount of damage, which was a little bit annoying because it's like, well, if I hadn't have been on 1 HP from the previous move, I would have been like, oh, that's it? Well, do it again, I don't care. But yeah, just Bubble and Bubble Beam with Barry quite easily took down the side 2. So for the second round, your condition again is Special Attack Boost. This time I tried to take on Caitlyn. I kept getting confused with Cynthia when I was practicing for this, but it is Caitlyn. And I went in with a slightly different team to last time because I was going for a slightly different strategy. I went in with Luxray again, Raichu again, but Rotom was the third one that I took in because it can boost Special Attack and it's got Breathtaking. So with Luxray, you want to be using Thunderfang first. Hopefully you'll get a flinch out of that first move and that will put you slightly ahead of the game. Then Electric Terrain second, and then to get that critical hit on the Sync move, you use Make Some Sparks Fly. Raichu boosts itself. If Rotom doesn't get a move point refresh with Special Attack, you can use its third move to boost its Special Attack rather than Discharge. If Rotom gets that Special Attack, use it 3 times to get down to the Sync move. If it doesn't, you can either use Thunder or its 1-bar move to get that extra attack in and bring the Sync move in. And then you sync with Raichu. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute because there's a strategy that I worked out afterwards that I didn't do at the time. Once you've used your Sync move, you want to just use Breathtaking as much as possible to get to the next one. I'm kind of going with Raichu as a bit of a Sync nuke, even though it puts out quite a lot of damage naturally with its Discharge. You want to make sure that you set Electric Terrain again before its second Sync move, because that is going to run out. You can't get 2 Sync moves out of that. With that second Sync move, I did over 20k damage with Raichu, which is a huge amount. So that's going to take out the middle Pokemon, pretty much whatever you're running on Masters mode. Which is why I'm recommending, if you're doing a similar sort of thing, you target one of your side Pokemon with the first Sync move, because that'll do a lot of damage. Maybe even take it out so you've only got 2 to deal with, and that'll mean your discharges are a lot more effective through, up until the second Sync move and then onwards from there. So once the middle has fainted, you can try doing a bit of flinching with Luxray and Volkner. You got to be a bit careful on who you're targeting for the flinching, because it can be to your advantage or it can put you a bit of disadvantage depending on which order you're trying to attack in. The side Pokemon, I can't remember what move it did, but it took out Luxray and Raichu before I could finish them off with Discharge. I had to rely on evasiveness with Rotom because it has a passive that raises its evasiveness, and I got a little bit lucky because as I was facing Frillish, that dude couldn't have hit Icy Wind if it stepped outside in the Arctic. Oh, I nailed it! Nailed it! I should do stand-up. But yes, I was able to hit a few Thunders. I was close to a Sync move, so I was able to just get a few quick attacks in there, Sync move, and that was all she wrote. So for round 3, it was permanent field effects. Again, I decided to take on Grimsley and go with a grass team that was solar dependent. So I went in with Meganium, Sceptile and Torterra. Torterra's not necessarily sun dependent, but what I like is one of her passives, when it's hit by an attacking move, it raises its own attack and it lowers the attack of the other team. So that comes in useful if it's set as your first Pokemon and it's doing the work of tanking. So you get down to your first Sync move and you want to sync with Meganium, because Meganium has a Sync Grid move where it'll set the sun when it syncs. That's a bit of a tongue twister there, and that's good for both itself and for Sceptile. They both get a move gauge charge out of it and they both get a bit of healing. So once that's set, you want to use Sunny Side Up, you're using Leaf Storm, you're using Razor Leaf where you can, where the move gauge allows it with Torterra. That is one thing with with the team that's put together there. It doesn't have the best speed, so although Meganium and Sceptile both get a move gauge boost, it doesn't necessarily move fast enough for you to use a Leaf Storm, an Energy Ball, and a Razor Leaf in the same turn very often. So it's swings and roundabouts. Sceptile for me fainted off of an Earthquake from one of the side Pokemon. There wasn't very much left of the other team when that happened though, so I just substituted that for a Seed Bomb from Torterra. I was surprised, that put out a hefty amount of damage. It was almost as good as a Leaf Storm itself, so, you know, when a door closes, a window opens. I wasn't at my smartest for this one, unfortunately, so my advice would be to remember that after the middle Pokemon faints, the two side Pokemons, they alternate. So once you know that pattern, you can focus on who you're going to take out. You want to time it so that you take out one side just as it's about to attack. And that gives you an extra move because the other side won't be able to call an attack until it's gone down and it's done the animation. While that animation is going on, you can call a move, so you can hit it with another Leaf Storm. If I'd have done that, I'd have probably finished the round with all three Pokemon still standing upright. So I think round 4 is the only one that I did in the same order, and it's Marshall again. It's just a no-brainer. He's weak to poison. Poison Pokemon cause poison and do damage that way, and badly poison. So I mixed up my team a bit. I went in with a team of Misty, Ariados, and this time I went for Lucy and Seviper. Seviper? Anyone know how to say that? Because I do not. In the middle. So Seviper is a little bit of a hybrid of Koga and Viola. It's, if you smush those two together, you'd get Lucy. Because she can cause poison. She can also cause trap. Her trainer move gives her a bit of healing, self-healing, which is good. So sometimes you take that over what Koga gives you, which is the evasiveness. Like if you were going against someone who's got piercing gaze and evasiveness was useless, it would be come on down Lucy and Seviper. So to start off with Lucy, you're setting poison and trap on the three opponents. With Ariados, you maybe boost your evasiveness first because you're not sure if that poison is going to stick on the first move, and then you're using Venom Drench to bring down the stats. With Misty, you're doing healing and you're raising your special defense, but that doesn't really do a huge amount because most of Marshall's moves are going to be physical attacks with his fighting types. I do just want to say, I think Lucy really is an underrated unit. You put a good team around her, and that poison damage and that trap damage combined from just the one unit gives you a lot of flexibility. You could possibly go in with 2 tanks, one of which has got healing potions on it, because maybe her passive isn't bringing enough health back to her, and just keep her protected. Your sync move order doesn't really matter this one because you're not relying on the sync move as much as you would do in other battles. It's your poison and your trap that are doing the hard work and the heavy lifting here. So I think I used all 3 of them. I used Janine a couple of times, Lucy once or twice, and Misty. I used all 3 of them. No one in this team can boost their speed, so move gauge usage does become a tiny little bit of an issue, but I finished it with all of my Pokemon still standing, so you can't ask for everything. And finally, you come to Iris again. The condition on the Iris fight this week, the permanent one, is that special damage is reduced. You can get around that though if you really want to by boosting special damage using one of the optional parameters. I'm not entirely sure why they would put those in the same week. I did that on the first go round to cancel each other out. The second time around I went for the status conditions boosts again, and I went in with 2 tanky units in Venusaur and Steelix, and then in the middle I had Iris and Haxorus again. So you're trying to set poison in the first few rounds with Razor Leaf on Venusaur, and you're just spamming that move. You're raising defense with Janine and her little rabbit ears, and use a Clang as the third one if you don't get a refresh on X Defense All. Haxorus is boosting itself, ready for the sync move. You sync with Iris, then you want to use Mega Healing with Venusaur and Clang with Janine, because that's going to... Sorry, Jasmine. Getting those two confused. It's all the J's. Oh, the J's. Because that's going to give you healing on all of your units, it's going to give you a sync move countdown, and then it's going to boost your move gauge. And with Iris and Haxorus using Outrage, which is a 3-bar move, that's going to come in handy. And hopefully you'll get lots of refreshes on Clang so that you can keep using Outrage over and over again. I got a little bit lucky on this one because I got a good 2 or 3 refreshes on Mega Healing. I didn't utilise them effectively. I saw that I had 2 moves to go before a sync move, and I was like, oh, Haxorus Outrage, and then I was like, oh, what do I do here? Just use Mega Healing, and it's like, I could have saved it and used it more effectively if I hadn't have panicked. But in the end, it didn't cost me the battle. Venusaur did faint during the course of the battle. One of the side Pokemons used, I think it was Earthquake, it was one of the moves that hits all 3 of your Pokemon, and it took both Steelix and Haxorus down to 1 health. I had Endurance on both, and then Poison kicked in and it took the unit down. I would have been able to take it down in the next move even if it hadn't have had Poison. But I was lucky that I had Endurance on both of them. Well, I wasn't lucky, I planned for it. That's why I chose those ones, to get that Endurance. And it worked out in my favour. And I ended that week with a good 7,500 points, which is the maximum. And I was pretty pleased with it. I managed to do it pretty efficiently. I didn't have to work through many strategies. So yeah, I was happy that the conditions and the weaknesses matched up with the teams I could put in place. Okay. I'm going to talk a bit more about the Battle Villa. I managed to finish that off this week. I said last week that I'd been going in with a team of Heliolisk, Swanna and Barry with Empoleon. I got to round 10 and I was quite surprised when Beware used Giga Impact and took out Heliolisk. I was even more surprised when it did the same thing to Swanna. I thought that my girl would be able to survive that. But I'd used all my potions by that point and I couldn't put her back to full health. So luckily Barry was still in there and he was able to do what Barry does and put out lots of damage. And after that I went in with a more serious team to do the serious job, and that was Xerneas, Venusaur and Charizard. Now at this point I'm going to say, if you're struggling with where to put your gems, my advice is save them up, get at least 40 in the bank before you spend any more, and wait for an event that gives you the opportunity to pull Red and Charizard, Leaf and Venusaur, Signasuit, Blue and Blastoise, because any of those 3 are units worth having. Any of those 3 can be absolute game changers in any mode of the game. Charizard, for a long time, the advice was always just use Charizard. Whatever you're doing, just use Charizard. Leaf, with its poison and its potions, I've talked about it a lot of times, it's so useful to have. I've got my 40 gems saved up so that I can get more pulls of blue, because I've only got 1 of 5 and I can't unlock the full potential of its sync grid at the moment. That's what I'm hanging on to my gems for. I find the Battle Villa strangely gets easier towards the end, because I usually try to avoid using my health refreshes and my move refreshes between rounds. And then when I get to the last few rounds, I've got more than I need, so I can go into everyone with full health and full moves and not have to worry about what I use and just treat it as a standard battle instead of thinking, ooh, do I want to use one of my trainer moves? What if I don't get a refresh on it? Then I won't have it for the next battle. I might have to use one. So maybe next time I'll be a bit more free with how I use my move point refreshes and my health refreshes. And then in the final 3 rounds, they all had a weakness to water. So I took out Charizard, I put Barry back in, and he just went to town. I ended up with only having had two units fainted. As you see, I'll put it up here. You can see how many refreshes I've got left at the bottom there. It's like, I don't need that many. I can be a bit more liberal with using them earlier on, and maybe I'd have had none of these units faint. Maybe I'd not had to use any of them at all. The Explorers event ended this week. I was a little bit surprised when I got to the end and I'd only managed to pick up one extra bronze ticket. I think back to the Valentine's event where that cost 750 of the big currency, and I managed to pull what felt like dozens and dozens of them. So maybe it was lower drop rates, maybe I'd spent a bit too much time focusing on getting sync orbs, but all in all I'm pretty happy with how that event went. And finally, the latest event to drop was Trial on the Isle, where some of the Alolan trainers come along and set you lots of challenges. I was quite disappointed with the range of Pokemon that give you boosts on this event. So there's 5, 6 if you include the 2 for your player trainer, but you can only use one of them at a time. 2 of those units are for the event, so they've only just been released. And you look at the amount of sync pairs on there that are Alolan, it's like, come on, where's the love for Gramble and Mina, for example? What about How and Raichu? You know? Where's the boost for them? Why are you doing my boy so bad? And my girl. So if you don't have any of the pullable ones, like me, you're left with a choice of Pikachu, Torchic, Hapu and Mudsdale, and Nanu and Alolan Persian. So I went into the daily challenge with Nanu, Mudsdale and Pikachu being targeted first because it has endurance and it has potions to keep itself up. So with Nanu you want to be using Screech to lower defense, and then you want to use Bite to be causing flinching. With Hapu you want to be using whatever the trainer move is called to boost its stats and maybe its accuracy, but you don't necessarily need that. And then you use high horsepower through the rest of the battle. Sync with Mudsdale as well, that was my choice. Pikachu, you're using Let's Get This Started, or whatever the trainer move is, and then potions as much as and when you need them. The one you want to really be aware of is Earth Power, because Pikachu's weak to the type and that can one-shot it. So it'll have endurance, but if you don't get refreshes on that, you want to be on the lookout for that and have a potion ready afterwards. You might also want to consider using a bit of a flinch mode with Persian and try and get the flinch in there so that it doesn't get to use that move. This one is definitely a bit of a war of attrition though. I did it today and I was on my 4th sync move before I took out all of the other pairs. And that was the week that was Unova Week 2. Next week we'll be on to Week 3. I'll go through the full force battle for the Trials on the Isle. We'll have another week of Masters Mode on the Champion Stadium. Maybe we'll have another event that pops up as well. But until then, I hope you have a good week trying out your strategies. You've made it past the 90-second mark of this video, which is a sterling achievement. You must have found something that you liked, so why not subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter and see if there's a bit more that tickles your fancy. But thank you very much for watching this video, and goodbye.